Hello, everyone, and welcome to I Never Knew But My Dog Did podcast. I am Maureen Scanlon, your host and life coach, Maureen. As most of you know me, I'm so happy to be here with you today, and I'm so thrilled that you're here with us. I appreciate all of you, all the good reviews, the 5 stars that we're getting, and the momentum in growing this community to help one another pay it forward. And as I say, be the voice your younger self needed. As usual, as redundant as I am about my introductions and saying my next guest is amazing, I'm just going to say, really, my next guest, she's so accomplished, and just everything about her I love entails the things that we want to be as humans. And I think the humanness of her, when she talks about her own trauma, you'll understand how valuable and important the information is that she gives us. Because I always think experience and education come together to make the most experts. So today we're talking with Judy Foreman. She's the author of A Nation in Pain, The Global Pain Crisis, and Exercise is Medicine, all published by Oxford University Press, and the novel CRISPR'd, published by Skyhorse Publishing, and a memoir, Let the More Loving One Be Me, from She Writes Press, which I'm excited to dig into. She was a staff writer at the Boston Globe for 23 years and a health columnist for many of those years. Her column was syndicated in national and international outlets, including the LA Times, Dallas Morning News, Baltimore Sun, and others. Woo! She graduated Phi Beta Kappa from Wellesley College in 1966. She spent 3 years in the Peace Corps in Brazil and then got a master's from the Harvard Graduate School of Education. Whew, as if that was not enough. She has been a lecturer on medicine at Harvard Medical School, a fellow in medical ethics at Harvard Medical School, and a Knight Science Journalism Fellow at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. She was also a senior fellow at the Schuster Institute for Investigative Journalism at Brandeis. She also hosted a weekly call-in radio show on healthtalk.com. She's won more than 50 journalism awards. Okay, I'm knocked over with a feather here, including the 1998 George Foster Peabody Award for co-writing a video documentary about a young woman dying of breast cancer. I am so pleased and excited to bring to you all. Hi, Miss Judy.
Hi, Maureen. I don't know if I can live up to that introduction, but I will try. I will try my best.
Isn't it funny? Sometimes, like, what we are on paper, we're like, oh, wow, I am pretty cool, huh? We forget that. No, you
are in my pajamas,
I know, right? Sometimes I'm out there picking up my dog's right before I get on podcast, and I'm like, oh,
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. All looks good on paper.
I love it. And I want to, because I do my homework, I do want to start by saying that your memoir is so valuable. And I love that it's so touching and that you do share and that vulnerability story about your own life. So here at I Never Knew, we start with our knee story, which means that moment when I was down on my knees and I said, something's not working for me, or this programming that I've had, or this belief system I had needs to change. Can you share with us a knee story moment that you had in your life?
You know, I don't think there was one dramatic epiphany moment. I think it was more gradual than that. During and maybe after my first marriage, which did end in divorce, although it was a very amicable thing, and we were just too young to get married, basically. Then I started to go to therapy, and that helped some. But as I sort of got better, I did better and better therapy and a different kind of therapy, and it wasn't one eureka moment or crack moment. It was just gradually understanding how my anxiety basically in my adult life, where it came from. And it was more like peeling back the layers of an onion rather than one big, well, as you could say, knee moment. So that was more my experience.
Yeah.
More layers of the onion.
I love that. I love that. And that's great because I'll ask that question. A lot of people will say, well, I had many knee moments or,
Right.
or I have this one that all of a sudden, maybe I got a brain tumor or, I was suicidal. And I love that you say that it does look different in different ways with different people in different lives and experiences. And you're right. Sometimes it shows up in the little ways and then you have to just kind of dig down, take those layers off and figure out where it came from. So let's talk about your memoir and how, what type of trauma did you start discovering when you peeled back the onion layers?
Okay. Well, my memoir is called "Let the More Loving One Be Me," and that phrase is kind of taken from a poem by W.H. Auden. And when I give talks, I sort of start with explaining where I got that title from. It was a very touching moment between my husband and me. But I started writing memoirs in a course I took at the Harvard Graduate School for Learning and Retirement. It's one of those lifelong learning programs for people, I think over 50, over 55 or something. I took a memoir class just for fun. I've been a reporter all my life, and writing journalism is a totally different ball game from writing personal stuff. So I thought I would start to explore that, and it was a lot of fun, and it really made me think about my early childhood, as did therapy. I mean, everything kind of came together. And the first memoir in the book, the first chapter is actually called Danger, because in hindsight, although not at the time, I realized I grew up in a very unsafe family. And my father was a top corporate, he was a vice president for one of America's biggest corporations. Everybody knows that corporation. He was a corporate jerk, to put it on air. He was narcissistic, very much like Trump, never apologizing, angry all the time, no self-insight, just very narcissistic and rageful. And he used to come into the doorway of my bedroom every night when I was a teenager and just stand there. And he basically had no clothes on. He just had a t-shirt on. And I was terrified that he was going to rape me. He never did touch me in those situations, but I never knew when he was going to. And so I grew up petrified of him and of going to sleep, which sort of gave me lifelong insomnia and sleep issues, because I was afraid if I went to sleep that he would jump on me and rape me while I was asleep. So it makes you vigilant. And my mother was, I guess codependent might be a word. I mean, everybody was totally intimidated by my father. My brother and I and my mother, we all walked on eggs around him, trying not to get him to explode. And my mother was a sort of an average person, but very superficial. She could not deal with emotions. She just was totally, hyper cheerful all the time, for completely ignoring what was going on in the family and the truth of the family dynamics. So I grew up with a lot of fear, and also fear of my own emotions, which has turned out to be the biggest problem. If you're scared to feel sad or angry or lonely or whatever, it's really hard to live with yourself because if you're sort of rejecting or critical of all those emotions, you end up kind of in turmoil with yourself, and that's taken years to sort of unravel. After I got out of the house, I went to college, and that was huge. I went to an all women's college, Wellesley, which was great. I really loved going to an all-women's school. For the first time in my life, I was valued either because of or despite being a woman. And that was huge because that was not happening in my family. Um, and I loved it and I did well. And then I met my first husband at the first mixer of freshman year, and we went together for all 4 years. And then we went in the Peace Corps, and that was great. By the time we came back and went to graduate school, things were starting to fall apart a bit. Um, but we had a good time for quite a long time. And then I stumbled into journalism, which was just a wonderful gift. Freud said that the two most important things in life are love and work, and I believe that. And my work has been incredibly gratifying, in part because it fits my personality. I'm an extrovert, and as a journalist, you get to talk to everybody, and that's fun. But also because it's a search for the truth. And as a journalist, you get paid to look for find the truth, or truths, plural truths, and put them on the front page. And in my family, there was no truth. That's true for a lot of abusive families, a lot of alcoholic families. My father was an alcoholic. There's denial is the name of the game, and being able to speak truth to power, as the saying goes, was huge. And so between therapy and my work, I got to really be brave enough, I guess, to try to see what the truth really was. But frankly, it's not an epiphany. It's a slow peeling of the onion, a lifelong effort, essentially.
Yeah. And I think in your family, I mean, if we unpack the two things you were majorly taught was you have to accept that this is how your father is. And you were taught to curb your behavior, your thoughts, and
Right.
your emotions around his happiness, his moods, his rage, his anger. And then you've got mom showing you we just stifle down our emotions. We just
Right.
put a mask on and we pretend everything is okay. And
Exactly.
so, yeah, here you are trying to be emotionally stable for pretty much everybody. And what I love is that you found your love and your purpose in journalism. And I think anything, and this is something I encourage all of my clients to do, is when you find something that's a creative, and I don't care if it's exercise, working out, nature, painting, art, writing, I think we need those outlets. And I think that's sort of one of the first steps to being able to unpeel that onion, because you finally get to sort of open up and say, hey, this is my truth. And I know when I wrote my first book, I was so nervous about what I was saying because mine's nonfiction. And like you said, journalism versus memoir is the difference between nonfiction and fiction. One, you can just pretend and just stick to the facts. And the other is your story, your
Right.
vulnerability, and those anxieties and fears of, what are people going to think? What's my family going to think? My mom didn't want to read my book for 2 years because she was afraid of what was going to be said about her. It didn't change that those things happen, but then that guilt came back on me being a codependent as well, and saying, oh, I got to protect my family. I got to make sure they don't look bad. But it was freeing and it was empowering. And I love you found that in journalism, and it's why you excelled at that, which became your passion. So what do you think was the difference in the investigative journaling versus being able to do the columns, the advice columns, and the scientific information? Which one did you enjoy the most, and what do you think is most important?
Well, I wasn't really an investigative reporter. In journalism, investigative reporters spend years, months on a story, and they use a lot of documents, and they get court records, and it's a lot of following paper trails, and very tedious and hugely important. Um, when you think of the pedophile priest story, which the Boston Globe, my paper, won a Pulitzer for, and basically opened up that whole sordid mess for the world, that takes a real commitment on the part of the newspaper's editors to let 4 or 5 reporters be free enough to not write the daily stuff, really focus on uncovering really what was going on, like in that case in the church. or in politics or whatever. I was a daily reporter. I wrote for the daily newspaper. And then after a while, I got a column which ran in our science section for many years. And that was wonderful. I loved writing about science. I was almost a biology major. Then I became an anthropology major in college. But I love the science and particularly medicine. So I have a lot of natural curiosity. And so questions, when I would interview scientists, questions would naturally pop into my head. And it was a nice back and forth. And it was very gratifying to basically be an explainer, explain difficult medical stuff in terms that the rest of us can understand. Sometimes I felt like I was a translator and sort of, let's get to the chase here. What's really happening? What are people dying of? What's the mechanism? I like the mechanisms. What's causing this? So that was really fun and very gratifying because I look back at the columns that I wrote and they really were accessible. And the medical field is so non-accessible for most people. So that really felt good to do that. Really
I love that perspective because you're absolutely right. Medical seems so foreign. I started in the medical field as well in nursing and then transferred over to, and I also worked in a national laboratory for 27 years. And then I transferred over to life coaching and psychology, which is absolutely my passion because I'm like you. I want to know why. Why do we do what we do? Why do we think the way we do? But you're right. When it comes to medical, when you're in the medical field, it's just a daily thing, that all the acronyms and all the diagnosis become just such regular. And especially me being in the laboratory field, it was like, oh, well, I know what your SED rate is for. And I know, and my husband will say, I don't know what all that means. And I'm like, oh, yeah. So to do that, I love that you said that you did become this translator. How does this apply to me? And I think that's anyone who's really good in their field. I could ramble on about psychology, but who cares if it doesn't pertain to what affects you in your life? And I think that's magical. So one of the things that's really important to you that I read in your blogs is aging, and especially aging and exercise. And I'm here to tell you, I hate exercise.
Okay, let me interview you. Why do you hate exercise?
Because my brain says it's hard and it doesn't feel good. So I've convinced myself I don't like it. And it's exhausting. And I have arthritis and I'm sore and I don't like to sweat. So I view it very negatively. So how do I stop doing that and get moving? I love to walk. So I like other forms of exercise.
Oh, well, walking is great. I mean, and that's a key point for people. I mean, you mentioned my book, and I'll mention it again. The memoir is Let the More Loving One Be Me. The exercise book is called Exercise is Medicine. You can get them both on Amazon. I loved writing the exercise book because, I mean, we all know exercise is good for you and we should do it, but it becomes a should. And as you were talking before, I like to know the why. Why is exercise so good? And if you think evolutionarily, we were not built to sit in front of screens and talk to each other or type all day or sit all day. We were built to move. And you said you've got this brain thing where you're taught yourself you hate exercise. There's 2 chapters in my exercise book that are my favorite chapters, and they both have to do with the brain. So when we exercise, the brain pumps out a chemical. I'll give you the name of it, but I'll also give you the nickname. The real name is BDNF, which stands for brain-derived neurotrophic factor. In plain English, people call it miracle grow for the brain. It's a little chemical that the brain puts out, and it makes new nerves grow. So it helps memory. It makes new nerves grow in the hippocampus, which is the part of the brain that we most think about for memory. The other thing it does through the same miracle grow, it boosts mood through the chemicals interact with each other in the brain, the neurotransmitters, and it improves mood, specifically depression. And in a lot of studies, aerobic exercise is as effective as medications for improving mood. And you get fitter in the bargain. So there's so many reasons to exercise. Yeah, I like exercising. It makes me feel good, and I feel like I've done it. I can check that off. So if I did nothing else that day, at least I did my exercise. And I feel like you have to make it non-negotiable. It's basically not, do I feel like it today? I mean, unless you're sick or really, in bad shape, it's always good. And it does, you don't have to go to the gym. Like, you walk. Walking is great.
Yeah.
Walking
Yeah.
is great. Walking counts.
I think it's very similar to when I ask people to meditate, the first thing they think of is sitting still for 30 minutes and doing nothing. I can't do that. And so I tell people, find a different way to meditate. Music is meditation. Being out in nature is meditation. And I need to take my own advice. The coach needs to coach yourself, in that I don't have to look at exercise in the way that I have to sit in a room and just do these things that don't feel good to me. So I walk around. We have a lake here in my town, and it's 3 miles around the lake, and I do that twice a week. And I can go outside and pick weeds, and that's still movement. I always say, as long
Right.
as we're moving. And I
Right.
love what you said about we're hacking those happiness chemicals, the serotonins and all that stuff that our brain needs. And
Right.
I feel good after the walk. It's just the before, right?
So don't call it exercise.
Right. What should I call? I should reframe that. I'm gonna go hack some happiness chemicals right now. How's that? And
Or I'm going to go for a walk.
yeah.
You
I
know,
Yeah, and especially I am neuro divergent, so I need a lot of stuff to stimulate me. So being out in nature and seeing other people, and especially seeing dogs on the trail, that's fulfilling to me. And that doesn't feel like exercise. When I think of exercise, I think of a gym, which no way, no how I can be in that environment. But exercise to me is just lifting weights or doing sit-ups. And you're right, that's not how I need to look at it, right?
right. What, I don't know the term neurodivergent. What does that mean?
So that's anyone that has either high functioning autism or on the spectrum, ADHD. So it's those that have those different neuro receptors, and neurotypical is people that don't have that. So it isn't depression or anxiety or anything. It's really being wired a little bit differently. Your receptors work differently, more impulsivity, difficulty following through with tasks, those kind of things. So it's
Okay.
that's a whole nother study in and of
Conversation,
itself.
right.
Yeah. But I've learned how to cope well with it. And so in your besides the exercise for aging, because look at you and how beautiful and fantastic you look. So whatever you're doing, I want the secret to your fountain of youth. What else besides exercise should we be doing?
Well, actually, I have a big piece on aging that ran about a year ago in the Boston Globe magazine, which I forget all the things I talk about, but certainly exercise was huge. Um, Taking care of your microbiome with probiotics and yogurt and kefir and stuff like that is really important. And the social aspect of things, there's recently there's been some publicity about what people are calling the loneliness epidemic. And I think we were already headed for that a little bit, but COVID made it a lot worse. People sort of being shut in their houses. And an awful lot of people, married or not, are express or say they feel lonely. And we are basically mammals. We are mammals, and mammals cuddle. Mammals are in groups. Mammals are in packs, and we're all living very isolated lives, and more so as people work from home, which a lot of people love. I didn't love it all, but it has its advantages. But it's like you really have to search out social connections, and that's huge for people. It can be done. You do have to make an effort. It's not really automatic the way our lives are set up. or many of our lives are set up. Um, like I am now living in a condo, having lived in a house for most of my life, and I'm stunned by how nice it is to have a little community.
Yeah.
One person down the hall is in the hospital. We put flowers outside our door or call her or whatever. People take care of each other. And there was one study that I wrote about many years ago where a group of Italians from a little village in Italy, obviously, moved to someplace, I think it was outside of Pittsburgh or Philadelphia or someplace, and they kept up the traditions that they had in Italy. They talk to each other from their porches and stuff. And that those weak ties that bind are really important, as important as the family ties or whatever, friendship ties.
I agree with you so much on that, because I think technology and all of its convenience, and it is great to I can communicate with you there in Boston, from here in Austin.
Right.
But you're right, there's nothing that replaces human contact. There's nothing that replaces in fact, I just met a new friend here. I've been here for 6 months, and we had coffee before I came on to this podcast, and it felt so good. It was like,
Yeah.
just to have that face to face. And you're right, we've lost that. And I love the beauty of what you say back in COVID. And I know a lot of your articles and blogs were on that. And I love that so much. I found that in my neighborhood, I met more people during COVID than I had in the, 14 years prior, because people were getting outside and they were
Huh.
stopping and talking to each other. People were riding bikes, and we've lost that. So I love that you say if we could keep that small town feel with how the old days were. You think about Mayberry and you think about Andy Griffith, everyone knew everyone and was there to support each other. And it feels a little empty when it's just over a computer screen. You've got to have that. And I think there's a energy and a chemical thing that we need to be present in person with one another.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree. You were lucky to live in a warm place during COVID. For those of us in the Northeast, you don't go out if it's blowing and blizzarding. That makes the
Yeah.
isolation much worse for people.
That's very true. That's very true.
Yeah.
Arizona was wonderful for that. We even had something that was really neat. By the mailbox, people were putting out boxes of things. Put something in, take something out, and there was like puzzles, and there were books, and I had put some of my books in there, and crafts for the kids. I thought it was the coolest thing, and then
That's nice. Yeah.
it went away after the epidemic, and I'm like,
Yeah.
why can't we just keep doing that? But I think
Yeah. Yeah.
that's why I think depression and anxiety have increased, because I think we've lost so much of that human touch and caring, and the loneliness epidemic, like you said. Even people who were married and in relationships during COVID were lonely in the household with their entire family.
Yeah.
And it made people open their eyes and go, I am not in the right situation. I'm not happy. This job isn't working for me anymore. Especially like yourself being an extrovert. I'm an introvert. And so I was okay with it, but I still needed to get out and do some contact with people as well, mostly family. So yeah, I agree with you 1,000,000%. So we need socialization. And in life coaching, we call it the life wheel of balance. So you need to make sure you've got all these pieces in your life balanced, and you leave a piece out, and then you open that door for anxiety or depression or hopelessness. So what else besides our exercising and our socializing do you think is really important?
Well, I think if people are really having a hard time, therapy really matters. And in this country, we don't prioritize mental health nearly enough. It's not on a par with so-called regular medical care. And it should be, because a lot of people need it. And certainly there are good therapists and bad therapists, but if you can find a good one, there are a lot of, when I'm driving around listening to the radio, I hear of networks that you can join and find a therapist. I mean, they exist. And if you can't afford a therapist, and if alcohol is your problem, there's a lot of groups for a while. I went to adult children of alcoholics. People with alcohol problems go to AA. There's a lot of support that's free for people. And there are similar groups for overeaters and for other kinds of problems that people have. So, I mean, I think if you acknowledge what you have and can find a group to join or to be with, and you don't even have to say a word in some of these things, just go and sit and listen for a few weeks or months until you feel comfortable talking. I mean, I think it's sort of a question of reaching out and, to a professional or groups that are solid and sort of well respected.
Yeah, definitely. It's having a support system. That's very
Yeah,
important. You have to have that support system. You have to have people to just be able to vent to. And we don't
right.
need, as a, life coach and advocate, excuse me, for mental health awareness. And I am all about talking about it. No more stigmas. Like, we need to be healthy, because that's what makes a healthier world and a healthier environment for all of us, is when we're all healthy. So,
Right.
talking about healthy, I am so curious to know your opinion. Being that I was in the medical field, I saw what the medical interventions and chemistry can do. But now that I'm in more of a life coaching space, I am an advocate for more of the homeopathic and holistic healing, plants and those sorts of things. What do you think, as someone who's very, very interested in the science and explaining the science? What do you think about homeopathic and holistic medicine?
I think those are two different things. Um, Homeopathic, I think if you believe in it, there's a positive placebo effect. Go for it.
Mhm.
Maybe it's real. I'm skeptical, but open-minded-ish. Holistic, to me, that's different. That's more trying to make behavior changes that can benefit you as opposed to, or in addition to, medications. I mean, medications are not all bad. People, a lot of people, especially those recovering from addictions, try to not take buprenorphine or drugs that can help with addiction. And that's crazy. If there's a drug that can help you, why not take it? And that allows you to then do the personal growth stuff that you need to do. So I'm sort of more inclusive on those things. I certainly think the mainstream medical establishment knows a lot and has a lot to offer and shouldn't be rejected. But there's also a lot of, can't think of an airworthy word, dysfunction. And doctors are under enormous pressure, so you don't get enough time to talk to your doctor, and people wait months for a medical appointment. That is really messed up.
Yeah.
We really have a broken medical system. So I mean, when it works, it's great, but people have trouble with access and time with their doctor, and everything gets sort of overly medicalized, as opposed to thinking like menopause is become sort of a medical problem instead of a natural problem or natural state. So yeah, I think the holistic, meaning the whole person, not just their left foot or whatever, that really matters. And certainly, I think among wiser doctors know that, but some doctors are so rushed. And they all have to write all these medical records, which take hours and hours and hours of their time. So they don't have time for patients. It's backwards.
Yeah.
Um, and the insurance system is screwed up. You know, Everything is run by the insurance companies, which is not patient friendly. Well,
uh,
that's my diatribe for the day.
No, I completely respect that. That's why I asked it, because I love that. I love everybody has different views from where they're coming from. Agree with you on so many of those points. Agree in conjunction with, you can have medication, and then you can also have these other things that work, like extra supplements, magnesiums and stuff like that. I agree with you. I am not a opponent of of medication. I think, though, that we tend to actually make our mindset, I need this to feel better, rather than saying this is going to get me over a hump to where I don't need it. There are long-term ones that, obviously, I have high cholesterol genetically. I'm thin, I'm not overweight. It's everyone in my family. I've tried omega-3s, didn't do anything. I have to have a statin. So agree. There are just times when you need to have this medication. Mental health wise, I think definitely therapy and medication and life coaching, that in the order: medication, therapy, life coaching. I think in conjunction together, we learn those coping skills. And as you said, holistic is a lifestyle. And I love that you view that way. And why can't we integrate all three of them? My background is in medical billing. So when it comes to insurance, I will just hop right on a soapbox, but you're right. The doctors, that was my job, was to go train the doctors and their staff on how to code with the diagnostic codes, and what covers and what doesn't cover, what they can order and what they can't order. And I got such burnout, and I felt so bad for these doctors, because it became us dictating what they could do rather than them
Right,
being able to say, this is what's best for my patient, and
right,
I should know better. I went to medical school,
right,
and this is what has worked for them. And this whole debacle of medical necessity per these billion-dollar insurance companies, because they decide they're not going to
right,
pay. They know better my body, they think, than I know my body. And what's necessary is
right.
frustrating. And so you and I are right there together on that one.
Absolutely.
And it's one of the reasons why, like, my therapy, my life coaching is not covered by insurance, is because they cannot dictate it. And I'm happy about that. So good. You cannot dictate how I am personalizing the mental care that my patients need and my clients need. And it works 1,000,000%. But they want to come in with therapists and counselors, the licensing, they want to tell you how to do it. And I've had so many therapists and counselors on the podcast that say, I've gone to life coaching now because I don't have to worry about insurance.
Hmm.
So thank you for your insight on that. And I completely respect it. That's why I ask it. I love everybody's different perspectives on this. So my gosh, we've covered so much. I want to know about your novel. What is CRISPR about?
CRISPR is spelled capital CRISPR apostrophe D. And that's a reference to CRISPR, CRISPR in caps, which is a new gene editing technique that many people have heard of, although some still haven't. It's a revolutionary way of interfering. It's like a cut and paste system for taking out bad genes and putting in good genes, essentially. Like with sickle cell anemia, there's a lot of research now to take out the part of the gene that's bad and replace it with a healthy gene, so that people don't get this horrible disease, and other diseases that are just caused by a single gene, not a whole collection of genes. Although that might be in the future. It's very powerful, raises a lot of ethical questions. Who decides what's a good gene and what's a bad gene? Do we all want to be like you, blonde and blue-eyed? Or is there room for a variety? And, should we, with this new technique, are we going to end up with designer babies? Or trying to make everyone more intelligent or less intelligent? I mean, it could be bad in the wrong hands. It can also save countless lives. So it's one of these medical advances like DNA sequencing or whatever or the Manhattan Project for the atomic bomb. Science proceeds, and we have to make sure that we have some control so that it doesn't go down the bad path. And which gets into the question of who decides what's a good path and what's a bad path, and how do regular people get a seat at the table to decide what's good or bad. So my novel is provocative because I have an evil geneticist, not a good one, and he tampers with babies in his fertility clinic in a bad way. And this brilliant young female journalist at a paper, much like my Boston Globe, catches him and outs him and gets him in big trouble. So I think I should have said a spoiler alert, but anyway, it's a fun and educational. People who don't know about CRISPR, this is an easy way to learn about it, sort of without effort. So that was fun.
I love that. I love that. I love it. And I cannot remember the author who wrote a book called The One. And this is one where they run a test and they match you with your perfect mate, and you can find out or not find out. And it's through genetically, and I love it because it's like sci-fi and it hasn't happened yet, but you're like, oh, but that's possible. And I love that it's a novel. I love that it's like, oh, this could happen. And I think Netflix has a documentary out right now, similar to where they're talking about they have this technology, but you're right, it can't be in the wrong hands. And we have to think about too, overpopulation. I mean, there is a reason, the way life cycle goes, if everyone's living to be 150, do we have, sustainability? I mean, we're already poisoning our planet as it is with the population we have now. So really cool. I'm going to read it. I am so going to read it. And I cannot wait, because those are things that fascinate me. I love the what ifs. And if you have an inquisitive mind and you're like, hey, that could happen. If you're open-minded and you read those kinds of novels, it's almost like scary, but also exciting. Like, oh, okay, I could see that. And right now, one of the main things that they're doing is they're trying to find the genetic. There's a test to see if you have the gene for Alzheimer's, for the predisposition to get Alzheimer's, and then also breast cancer. So they've got that bracket testing, and people are being proactive and they're having mastectomies if they have it, regardless of whether they show, signs of cancer. So we're making progress, but I think the mutation of changing the DNA strands, or, do you think, and this is a deeper question, because I love your topic of your novel, do you think we all have the predisposition to have an illness? And do we have much control over that, nature versus nurture, or genetic versus lifestyle? How much control do you think we have over ailments or predispositioning of these things that we have in our genetics?
Wow.
I know I went deep, didn't I?
That's a big question. If you have the genetic predisposition to sickle cell anemia, you're going to get it, whether you meditate, exercise, eat right, or whatever. That it's going to happen. And the BRCA genes, if you have those genes, there's a high chance you will get breast cancer. I mean, and you can't meditate your way out of that. On the other hand, if you have sort of a tendency for high cholesterol or something, you can treat. Knowing that means you can treat it. You can take your Lipitor or whatever, and you can exercise. You can do the behavioral things. Basically, in terms of life expectancy, your behavior really controls a lot of how long you live. You can really do things or not do things that benefit your health. If you're really one of these centenarians, people live to be 100, or now there's a whole bunch who are living to 110, that's probably their genes that allow them to live that long. So up until, I don't know, I forget what it is, 80, 90, your behavior has a huge impact. After that, you probably just lucked out. But it's important that researchers are studying the genes that lead to those long lives, because those people are, genetically lucky, basically. But it's interesting what genes do predispose for that. So it's a complicated. You asked a very insightful and loaded question
I know.
without a simple answer.
Right, right. With 10 minutes left to go, I'm like, hey,
Okay.
let's get into the science or the belief. No, I do agree with you. I think there are many things we have control over with lifestyle. And then I think there are other things where we don't know enough about genetics. I did see a young lady, 105, who was on, I believe it was TikTok, and she was telling them she has a Dr. Pepper every single day, which soda is, but she had a Dr. Pepper every single day. So I think in that case, like you said, good genes. I have longevity in my family. My mom's grandmother lived to be 105 and her mother lived to be 96. And my other grandma lived to be 94. So I'm going to be around for a long time, you guys. So you're stuck with me. Maybe by that point, I will have more answers on whether your predisposition or your lifestyle will make a difference. But
Well, there's no harm in having a healthy lifestyle. I mean, why mess it up? Even if you have good genes, why trash it? Why become obese? Why, why why be miserable? I mean, it's a good thing to do regardless of whether you get the extra benefit at the end of life.
yeah. The theme here is in conjunction with. So we'll just keep saying in conjunction with, we're going to have a good, healthy lifestyle with good genes. We're going to do our best to eat right, exercise, and mental health. I really believe that people who have figured out more self-awareness and how to find joy, there's longevity there. That is my belief, that because you have the stress hormone that gets released when you have anxiety or depression or sadness or anything where you feel hopeless. And so that stress hormone comes out in many, many physical ways. And so when we're not generating that stress hormone, then that's when we're really living longer and finding more ways to be happy. And we do want to be healthier when we're happier because we enjoy life and I don't want to miss anything. And I want to see my grandbabies grow up. So, wonderful, wonderful stuff. We're going to let you pitch, but I'm going to ask you one question before that. I do a little segment here because I am neurodivergent and I do some odd things in my life. I'll give you an example. My segment is called How Weird Are You? So we all have idiosyncrasies or odd things that we do. And whether it's called OCD or whether it's called ADD, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It's just being human. And I think some of us just have just odd things. What is your weirdest thing that you do, Judy, that you think people would go, that's kind of weird?
I am stuck. Well, I think it's weird, but it's a good thing. I can do pretty well at like having a lot of chocolate around and only taking a small bite, which people think is weird, but it's great. The other thing I do a lot, I guess it's another eating thing, is I eat a lot of this is going to turn out to be an ad for these fat-free biscotti. They're made by Dijas, Dijas, and I am not paid by them, but I sort of live on those. Those are sort of my lunch, and they're only 25, 30 calories each, so you can have several, 4, 5, 6, and I spread them out for the afternoon, and that sort of holds me. So I have a big breakfast and a pretty big dinner, but essentially I kind of go light on lunch, and that really helps with weight control and stuff. So my husband might be able to tell you some other weird things, but that's the weirdest that I can think of now.
No, I love it. I know it's hard when I put you on the spot like that with a random question, but it's more authentic that way. No, I really, really love that. Are you my food can touch at Thanksgiving or my food cannot touch at Thanksgiving person?
What? Well, I don't understand the question.
So at Thanksgiving, when we have all those different courses, and do you mind if each one is touching, or do you separate them so they don't touch?
On the plate?
Yeah.
I don't mind if they touch.
Okay. That's neurotypical, and I am weird like that, and my food cannot touch. So that's
Oh,
kind of, I know it's a weird thing, right? And
that is weird.
I know I've seen people that like mix it all up, and it's a very weird thing. And I'm, like I said, I'm high functioning autistic. So for me, that's like I don't know, a sensitive thing that, woo, that was crazy. So no, I love that though. I think that's cool with the biscotti, and you could probably like use cheese or meats with it, or even, you can dip it in stuff. Is it kind of a neutral flavor, the biscotti?
It's somewhat sweet. You can dip it in coffee. You're supposed to dip it in something, but I like to just chew it. I've
No.
broken 2 teeth on it though, so
It reminds me of those biter biscuits I gave my kids when they were toddlers.
right, exactly. The Zwieback or something. Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for being on. Let us know where to find you. Where can we get all the books? Where can we find your blog? Everything about you. Let's showcase you and let the readers and listeners know where to find you.
Okay. Well, my most recent book is my memoir called Let the More Loving One Be Me. You can get it on Amazon or any of the other websites that sell books. I also have my own website where you can get my old columns, my blogs, my YouTube. You can go to YouTube and look at my videos. I did a book talk a couple of weeks ago, and if you go to YouTube and look for Judy Foreman, and you have to spell it right. It's Foreman. Same for Amazon, you have to spell it right. And my website is judyforeman.com. And again, that's Foreman.com. And you can find it all there. You can order the books from there, or you can order straight from Amazon. I recommend the YouTube videos because I gave a nice talk at a bookstore here in Newton, where I live. And there were a lot of good questions and answers at the end, and it was a beautiful, cozy bookstore, and it's a nice video. So YouTube is another way to do it.
Wonderful. That sounds amazing. And listeners, I'll have all of those links for you. I'll have her website up for you and her YouTube link as well. So you can go subscribe to her channel, and you can go on and find her books, her blog, her columns, everything about her, and also be able to contact her and just say, hey, we think you're fabulous. We heard you on I Never Knew. But my dog did podcasts with Maureen. So thank you so much, Judy. Hang in with me as we say goodbye. I appreciate the hour of your life that you gifted to myself and my listeners, because you're such an accomplished, a beautiful, and amazing person that brings so much to the world. And we need that. We love people who pay it forward and give to help others. So thank you for being on today.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Great. All right, listeners. Well, that's going to wrap us up for this week. I am again so grateful for all of you. Don't forget, if you want to reach out to me for any relationship coaching, dating coaching, confidence coaching, and life coaching, I'm at lifecoachmaureen.com. And on there, you can also find my books. My dog is more enlightened than I am, and my dog is my relationship coach, as well as Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all those fun places. And then don't forget to go to mydogiseverything.net, where we have apparel and nothing but healthy treats for your dogs. And now we've added treats for your kitties too. So we have safety products, seat belts, paw washers, apparel. Winter's coming up, fall's coming up. We've got really cute little raincoats and sweaters as well. Paw Balm, all natural and lickable. So go on and get all of your Christmas shopping out of the way now. So love you all for being here. Make sure you take care of yourself, take care of each other, and most of all, please take care of those furry babies, and let's make sure we adopt and don't shop. Until next week, guys. Thank you.